Hey, Bernard, good morning for me and good evening to you.
Hey, hello, how you doing?
Doing pretty well. How about you?
Yeah, finishing Friday, so weekend ahead.
Exactly. And it's the end of 2 weeks of interesting conferences. There's the MVP Summit and the FabCon. So I think both of us, I'm sure, can probably have a bit more of a normal week next week.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for me, it was all virtual, but still, you are always looking what's coming out, what can we finally talk about, all these sort of things.
Exactly. It's a part-time job sometimes trying to stay on top of social media, and I'm not as good as I used to about like posting about every latest and greatest, but I try to at least, like, if there's something particularly special, like the I'm trying to think of the exact name. I call them model level variables, but the new defined
variable thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and like it's Friday morning for me, and I'm sure somebody in the chat might eventually say it, but it has the same name as what they're in Fabric.
Okay.
Which is a little bit of the confusion. But yeah, you have them now with DAX where you can save pieces of measures at the model level, which I think is going to be huge. It's going to repurpose and allow for so many more like starter kit templates for a lot of model packages, which I think is absolutely going to be amazing. Yeah, I'm really excited for that one. That was one of the posts, just to say, like, I think out of the last 2 weeks, for me, living mostly in the Power BI universe, I think that was one of the biggest announcements that's existing in what I do on a day-to-day basis. Do you have any highlights before we get started on like anything over the last few weeks, or I guess FabCon specifically?
No, I mean, they were telling again about the DAX UDF, but still no public preview
UDF.
For us to play. Yeah, UDF, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, I was hoping for that to come out. I mean, it's out there. They're already talking about it, but I really want to give it a go and see where we can get to.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be plenty of blog posts for it, but I think there's at least 6 to 12 things that I can think of where you can just have them already sitting in the model. Because today, like I already have a model that comes with an empty measures table that already has built-in calendar table that's predefined. And thankfully with Tyndall View, you can at least move it around a bit easier if you need to transfer to new models. It has a hyper-configured theme file that has, using like Mike Carlo's tool, that has custom icons, a lot of visual defaults. And now to add to that starter kit that I basically just use with all my clients, I will be adding UDFs to that as well for many of these predefined functions, probably little packages for like custom titles, for visuals, anything related to time intelligence, all of this. So I'm very happy for this. It just means that your measures are going to continue to get smaller and smaller because you can just call upon saved master functions. Yeah.
No calculation group for you though?
The problem with those is like maybe one, it might be like month to date, quarter to date, year to date, like, but otherwise, like most calc groups are fairly somewhat like bespoke to the model. Like they're the repeatable patterns of a model, but because each client's model changes so much and measures are calc groups are so dependent on tables and columns that the only real calc group package that I would say is one that's just entirely based off of the date table. So like I'll occasionally put that into there, but even then it usually ends up getting customized by the client. Like they want specifically in their time intelligence calc group a special running total that's here today. Sometimes they want a running total that's all time. So rather than like having to reconfigure it, I usually just figure out what the specs are and add it afterwards.
Well, I created one that, I mean, because normally I don't manage many reports, but I was tasked to do one. It was like, okay, let me do this straight, because I had a chart with huge numbers and bars, and it was like, okay, this is way too big, and I want to be able to control that. So I created a number format calculation group. But then, of course, the numbers just become smaller, and you don't have any clue or any cue that these actually are billions or millions or something. So I created a measure that when dragged under the subtitle, and then you apply at the visual level this calculation group, the subtitle will become the actual units that are being used for the data labels. Okay. So
that's nice.
Thousands, millions, and then you get the numbers moving across. So I said, this should be everywhere, right?
And you could, because I know you can do that like that, because that's one of the things with some of the custom visuals where you can remove the repeating label from the value and you move it up into the header. Yeah, because like IBCS standard I think has that where it will show like sales in millions and then the whole table just has 2.5, but the title context represents that. So I've never done that, but I do in most of my reports. I have a calc group for label formatting, which is it's it has four levels. So there's two, which is at the visual level, because every visual has a special format string, which is it just displays native by default, or if it recognizes a filter from this calc group, it will display the number that's been scaled, or it displays the number scaled with the currency symbol. And I can either do that at the measure level or visual level. So basically I can use that calc group where it applies it to all of them, or it will apply to only the measures with that special dynamic format string.
I see. So you follow some naming conventions so to know which ones to use. Okay.
No, it's not even just a naming convention. It's just some of them have dynamic format string. Other ones just have standard.
Okay. If they have,
because if you have a table with like say like a number and a percentage, you don't want to scale the percentage and it throws off the matrix. So that's why I kind of split it, because sometimes you have 15 measures. I would just like to blanket apply all of these at scale. And other times you want to like pick and choose. So I found that package works well enough, but that's probably one of my other universal ones to go on a little rabbit hole of like fun tricks with modeling.
Yeah, and I played a bit with the Tyndall thing, and I was like, okay, I want to duplicate my date table, and with all the properties, so the Tyndall view is the way to go, right?
It's so nice. Oh, so nice.
Yeah, I know, but you need to get rid of all the lineage tags, because otherwise they become repeated in the model, and it's like, But then I brought it over to VS Code, and with some Copilot, I managed to get rid of them and then copy back, and boom, and then it worked. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, I think the first time I tried to transfer it, it threw an error because it's like unrecognized lineage or something like that. There's not a lot of code to take out of there, but it does make it very easy to move over. You get all of your folders, you get all of your hierarchies, sort bys. It's like that. It's really nice. Because the hard part is when a client asks me to update an existing model, like, but I have such a nice candidate table, and like unless you have Tabular Editor or something else, that's like a 15-minute process to copy the M code, restructure the entire table. So like TimDW has been really nice, and hopefully working with Rui, I would. My plan is to start a series of doing a couple of short videos on like just cool things you can do with TimDW as part of like a small series. So I want to continue to get people to use it. But
That's awesome.
To not get too far off the rails, because we can talk about this for an hour, I'm sure.
Totally.
I'd love to give you a chance for the people unfamiliar. And we already have somebody from Barcelona who's excited to hear from you. But if you want to start by introducing yourself, and then we can segue into going into the topic of the day as well.
All right. So yes, indeed, I'm based in Barcelona. My name is Bernat, and I've been an MVP now for 3 years. So hopefully July will be the 4th. And we'll see. Also, well, I'm part owner of a small consultancy. We do basically BI, but sometimes we go beyond that, and small applications, stuff like that, we can also handle it. And other than that, what else? Yeah, that's pretty much it, actually. I blog and I talk about calculation groups, C# scripts, and whatever tricky problem I had to face at work. So, and today is one of these days, because this took me the best part of 2024, I would say, to get it right and running in a customer. Yeah. And sure. So it's a lot of material. So the earlier we get in, the better, I think.
Sure. Yeah. Let me go ahead and flip over to our screen. There we go.
Yeah. So I put up a few slides. So just to get the ideas right, because we cannot cover everything. But there's one thing that I want to mention very, very strongly. And that is because when you talk about bilingual, people say, yeah, the metadata thing. Like, well, no, like really no. Model metadata translation is not report translation. It's two different things. And I want to make a case for that, okay? Because, follow me here. So here I have a beautiful report, yeah? And I've been very careful to just drag and drop the columns. Nothing changed, yeah? And I think I put only one title because the matrix does not have a default. But other than that, it's just this, okay? And then this model has a Catalan translation. So here I have another user sign in, and well, there is some stuff that is translated into Catalan. So we see the measure names have changed, also some of these column names. That's all good. But if we go in, we see that actually like all the country names or all the product categories, and even like even the month names, they're all in English. And most people will think, oh, come on, Bernat, but it's English. It's not that difficult, right? Yeah, okay. My real project was not like this. So it was rather the original reports were made in Japanese. And they were like new bosses of the company, which are in the UK. And they had absolutely no idea how to read the reports of this subsidiary. It's like, okay, this needs to change no matter what. That's why I actually got this project, because it's so much work that if you can avoid it, you'll probably avoid it. But they needed the reports. And the Japanese were not eager to lose their language in their own reporting, right? So they said, Bernat, figure it out, get it done. Sky is the limit, like just get it done. But then, of course, which bit of this report you would say, okay, yeah, you don't need to translate that. Remember, the original is Japanese. So basically, you need everything translated. It's not like, yeah, I don't care about the names. No, because you don't know who they are, or what's the color, or what's the category, or you don't know what the region is. You cannot read anything. Yeah. So anyway, you need to think a bit deeper on the problem. So, it's nice if you have a model translation in case somebody wants to drag and drop fields in Excel or something, but it's not going to translate the report. Yeah. So model translation is not report translation. Yes. Yeah, because this actually, we saw some changes, right? But this is with very, very strong limitations because, for instance, here you have, let me go back here. We have like year, month. What is this? Well, they are from, role-playing dimensions. But since I didn't change the name, we don't know which role is it. Because we should say, okay, this is the order date, this is the delivery date. Okay, what happens if I change that? Yeah, so here I change the display names and I put some nice titles and stuff so that at least things would be easier and better in general. Okay. Okay, what happens with this user has Catalan as the display language. And you see, order date and delivery date do not translate. So the moment that you change the name of a measure of a column in a visual, forget about the model translation. It's not going to get in there. Yeah.
Yep.
And still remember that the data is not translated either. So I just is to say that it's not going. I mean, here is completely invisible the fact that we have the model translated, which there's nothing to be seen.
That's still one reason that and just as I mentioned of things that slightly frustrated me a little bit with some of the native titling. So like, as you know, native titles, they've completely kept native without any customization will like automatically show hierarchy levels. They change dynamically, but there's no way to combine together a little bit of custom code with whatever defaults are. So you can't say keep column name plus extra random text. Like you can't concatenate. You either have to go non-dynamic custom or the really crappy native titling that they do, which is like 25 measure names plus, and like it's a long string. So it's and I'm sure you'll get into some of that, but I just wanted to emphasize the annoyance on how non-adjustable it is to keep and how hard it is to keep the titling and the model titles of the columns, measures, everything else synced together. It's not easy to do.
No.
As you spent a year doing.
No, it doesn't. It just forget about it. It's just type a string and translate the string and at the end of it. So, but now, before we lose track of our goal, this is where we are going. Yeah, so here we have this beautiful report. We had to make a few, I think this is not the super latest version. Yeah, it was, but here we have, at least now we have this, now it's Catalan is selected. So even though I have the English language as for display, since Catalan is selected, I see it in Catalan. The moment I click English, then everything turns into English. Okay, yeah, but you see we have here one issue that since everything are field parameters, when you change the fields that are used in a visual, then if it's like a 2-level, then it becomes collapsed by default, which is terrible. So in the desktop version, I just changed, so I have a 1 field axis, and I don't have this problem. But now look at this, everything is translated. So the categories and everything, yeah? So it is possible. So, but how do we do that? So it is very complex. So, but I just wanted to show you a little bit the strategy behind this, okay? So this is our report that I just showed you. Now, from here, we have 2 different types of things. One is the actual data. Yeah, so all these drop downs and this axis and everything, these are actually data that is in the model. You have to open the table to see it. Yeah. Whereas this would be report definition. Yeah. We have something that is halfway through, which are field parameters, because field parameters, are tables, but at the same time, they basically deal with fields and display names. So I ended up putting them into the report definition because it's also how you use them later. So it's not really like a data table. Yeah. So I decided, and the way to translate them is completely different from translating the rest of the table. So that's why I deal with them in the report definition. Okay. Now, bear with me because this is a write. Okay. So, this should not be here, but it's okay. We have the data and the report definition. Yeah. So we know that there are 2 different things. So from the data, we want basically to have the same table, but with extra fields with the translations. Yes. So any English field will have the pair with in Catalan. But with only this, we will not go very far, because of course, we need to be able to swap one by the other. So we also need a translation mapping table. Say, okay, in English, we use this field. In Catalan, we'll use this other, yeah? And so on. So one by one mapping of all these English textual fields that need translation. Yeah. So this is something that we will need to put together, not just for the data, but we'll see also for the report definition in a moment. The report definition is a bit more tricky. Yeah. First, we'll extract the fields in visuals. So which fields are used in which part of each visual. We need to extract that information from the report. And then using that translation mapping table, say, okay, and then when we go into the other language, the display name will be this other name, and the field will be this other field, if it's a textual field. If it's a measure and a numeric measure, then just the same one is fine, but the display name will need to change, right? So, well, it gets tricky, but with this mapping table and being able to extract this, then it will eventually work. Of course, when preparing it, we'll keep everything in one row, but at the end, we will want to have one row for each language, so we can filter by language, and then only the relevant row will remain visible. Now, for field parameters, it's something very similar. So now we have a table with the different fields and with a display name. We want to make it twice as high, yeah, with all the new fields, which might be the same, might be different, with the translated field display names and an extra column for the language. So we filter for the column, for the language, and only those relevant rows remain visible. Okay, so for this, we'll also use the translate at the mapping table. And then the other ones are a bit easier. One is very easy, is the actual visuals. Yeah, we'll see that we have to map exactly which visuals we want to translate, and we have some ID for each visual, easier one than the one that Power BI uses. And we'll use that as a dimension, so we can filter all the tables that we prepare. Yeah, and say, okay, this is the visual A, this is the visual B, and then all the tables will become filtered. Now, all the titles, I say titles, but I actually refer to all the object level strings. So that includes the titles, but also the subtitles, and also text boxes. You also will have to translate text boxes if you have them. And so all these strings will go in one table, and then we'll just have like twice the rows, one for the original one for the translation, and we will get filtered. Yeah, and also a column also for which visual should this title be used, and one column say, okay, what is this? Is this a title or a subtitle or something else? Because yeah, we'll need to create measures for each of the different bits. So you need to make sure that when you filter everything, only one row will remain visible. Yeah? And then the pages also have names. So you might want to translate this. However, in Power BI, pages are static. So you might use this, you might not. We'll tell you from my experience, I extracted that because it's actually very easy to do. But and I even created like some, dynamic navigation so that the language would change and the drop down. Well, they hated that, okay? And because when you go in an app, you will see the original page names on the left. So
only if you don't hide them. So you could hide all of the pages except for one, and then I think there is a way to do dynamic labeling in the page navigation, right? Because those are button-like. I think there's some way to probably stick a changing name
unless
in there.
You have two reports on your app and you need the pages on the other one, and then you need to have the navigation.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a bit painful. So anyway, we just put it both names with a slash in between, and we call it a day. Okay, so this is the easy chart. All right. Now let's go into the trickier one, because we cannot do that in one step. Okay, so we have our data. We have that all the namings, all the transformations, everything that we have now in our model. We need to move this upstream, because this will be our source, so to say. Yeah. So we push it into a SQL view or anything, or even when we load it the first time, we put all the transformations in that very, very first landing. Okay. Even like especially the field names. Okay. Once we do that, these are the originals. Then we land them into a Power BI. Here I use the Lakehouse. And but here the key is that we'll use some naming convention. Yeah. So all the fields that are in a certain language will have a certain suffix. Yeah. So we say the area name English, or product category English, stuff like this. If we get very lucky and we have already translated on the source, the translation on the source, we'll also use the very same name with a different suffix. So especially this is true for calendars, right? So with month English, month name Catalan, and so on, right? Yeah, because even for you need to do that yourself, because the automatic translation will never get the correct translations for the month abbreviations, for example. Yeah. Anyway, so we have this very nice convention, and we'll also keep mapping. So, okay, what's the name that we're going to be using here, and what was the original name? Because at the end, we'll need to bring it back to the original name. So we create this little table. Now that we have the table here, we just create a very small table. Say, okay, which fields do we need to translate? So we take into account if we have already the field with the other suffix, and we keep only those with the English suffix that do not have the Catalan suffix in this case. Yeah, so it's just a very, very small table, but we'll need that later. Now, here's the key. We don't want to translate the same thing 100 times. So a column might have the same word 100 times, but we just want to translate it once. So we'll need to unpivot and remove duplicates. So we get all the different field value pairs that need translation. Okay. For each of the tables that we need to translate. Yeah.
Yep.
And now, here's the key one. And this is the translation mapping table we were talking about before. But to get that, we need the actual field mapping. So the field is a table name and a column name, yeah, or a measure name, right? These are going to be column names here. But the table name is also very important, because this is what we'll find inside the report. So here we're not going to be using the same table names that we are using in the model, because we're in a lakehouse, so we don't have spaces, or we don't have strange characters. And also we might have role-playing dimensions, and we don't want to translate twice the same table just because we use twice inside the model, right? So basically, we'll create a very small table in an Excel file, say, okay, this is the table I have in the model, this is the table I have in the ETL. Yeah, we'll see this in a moment. Yeah, and from there, finally, we can start translating values. Yeah, so we translate this with Microsoft Translator or any API you like. And also this is a big thing that sometimes is lost in some demos online. They say, yeah, report translation is now 3 clicks, boom, you have it. Okay, this is not the real life. The real life, you cannot put into production something that came out of automatic translation. You cannot do that. So basically, you'll need some way of having translation corrections. Yeah. So here in this case, it's basically an Excel file in which we connect to the same table that we use for translating, but with an extra field in which you can type stuff, and then this is reloaded again and used when refreshing. So here we'll have the new values that we have all the values that need translation. We'll merge them with existing translations, and then we'll see if there's any new values that need translation. If so, we'll call a Microsoft translator. But before writing back into the lakehouse or the warehouse, whatever you like, you'll need to merge it if there's any existing translation corrections. And then for those that exist, then override. For those that do not, just keep the original. Okay, This is what we'll need to do. But remember, here we only have field value translations. Yeah, that's still not the table we need. For that, now finally, this is the pretty tricky one. So we need to get the landing table. Yeah. I mean, it's actually a list accumulate thing. So for each field that needs translation, we'll start, this is our seed, this will be the landing table. And then for each of them, we'll go to the field values with translations and get all the translations, do the join, add the column with the name, and then continue adding with each one. We'll see the actual steps in a moment. But we're still not ready because this does not have the names that we used at the beginning. So we cannot still load this as is in the model because it would break everything. But we have our original mapping. So we'll bring the old field names back. Yeah, and of course the original name back. And we can like swap them in Power Query and boom. And then we can load it. Everything will be working fine. We'll just have some extra columns. Yeah. This is the part of the data. Yeah. this yeah, you see, it's not easy. Yeah? And we're still halfway there only. Yeah, maybe let's have a look at this, because if I do the other part and then we try to go, we already forget everything. Yeah. So here the data translation is actually this pipeline. Yeah. You see here we do the landing. We have here the translation corrections. Oh, no, sorry, this is the table mapping one. That's a small table I mentioned, which is something like this. You see here, the source table is the same, but I have two model tables, the order date and the delivery date. Yeah. And also just because I wanted to show you that this might not be the difference here, I forced a little bit to use different names inside the model. So this is the names I use inside the ETL. These are the names in the actual model. Yeah. So let me see. Yeah. And from here, what I wanted to show you is this. Yeah, this list accumulate thing. Yeah? So here you see I'm using very condensed code. So this is everything is functions. This is also something I wanted to share with you all, because I had this. I mean, I was not. When I began this, I was really, Power Query was not really my thing. So I was very reluctant to start typing code in a function, because like then I lose all the magic of the UI to do stuff. And then I discovered also that you could, once you have a parameter in a query, then you can say, okay, create me the function, which was nice. But I also learned the hard way that this link between the query and the function sometimes is broken, and you never know until it's kind of too late. So I came out with a different approach that I haven't seen anywhere. So maybe you will like it, which is basically you create your function. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you create your query basically, and then at the end you just add your parameter thing. But if you comment it back, basically you get your query back, which is a very nice thing. But well, in this precise case, it's actually easier to see it here. Let me show you. This is what we are doing. So those are different functions, but basically they go and get different tables. Very important to keep a very strict naming convention so that we can go and find all the different tables with the same structure. As you see here, I'm starting with this is a table, yeah. So it's a one column table. Here I need a list, so that's why I call the actual field name. This is my source, yeah. Now the source table, which is this one, is from the landing lakehouse. This is the one that we saw. And this is our seed. So that's how we start. Yeah. The output table is like this. On the very first run, it's the source table, but on the subsequent runs will be like the source table plus the extra columns that we keep adding to it. And the current field is the item that we are iterating over this original list. Yeah. So, and here I call another function that will basically do this once. So giving a table, giving the translation table, and giving the name of the field that I want to to look for, it will add this one extra column to my table. But this is, for each run, it will have an actual name, So it's not super difficult to put. But the nice thing is that it will do as many joins and as many extra fields as needed. Yeah, so this was a very, very nice thing. So, and, but yeah, let me show you now that we're here, how the function that we had, you see now we have the steps back, and we can go and check which ones are there. Of course, you will need always to have all the different parameters and variables that you use inside your function should also exist in your Power Query, right? So you see here I have all the landing, lakehouse name, everything is there. So I'm using the base table name. You see here I'm using the product one, yeah? So when I'm debugging, this is what's gonna use. But you wanna debug a different one, you just need to go and change this.
Yep.
Yeah, so you see this is the source table, so this does not have any Catalan names at the end. You see the last one is still English. Now, in the second step, it goes and picks up the translations. Hopefully this will not take forever. Okay, so you see here we have the field, we have the value in English, and then we have the name of the field in Catalan. So it's basically the same one, but changing the suffix. And we have the translation as well. Yeah, games and toys, got jogs and joguines. All right, so and so on. So we have, but it's just one row for each possible value and field. Now we have the translations, and now the last one is the source table. Oh, the fields that need translation. Yeah, so it will only include those fields that do not have translation coming from the source. So for the calendar table, this will be empty because all the translations exist in the source. So here you see we have only 5 rows. These are the 5 columns that we need to add to our table. And in the last one is when it does all the magic with the list accumulate. Yeah. But of course, we need to be very careful when we are debugging, our output tables will become an error. So
it always amazes me how versatile Power Query can be for some of this stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, so here we see all the different Catalan, the columns in Catalan. The unit, not many products have unit, but the values are there. All right, so let me just, and you see, and the beauty of this method is that you will never break the link between the query and the function. It's actually the same thing. Would be nice if we had a button for that, but this is the next best thing. All right, so from the data, that's pretty much everything I wanted to mention. So let's go back to the PowerPoint, and now we'll see the fun part of the report. In the blog, I call it report metadata, but now preparing the presentation, I thought the report definition is better. So I'm calling it report definition. From here, as we mentioned, we have 4 things that we can get out of the PBIR. Yeah, the visuals that are used in each visual, the fields that are used in each visual, then the actual visuals, which we'll now see, the titles and the source. Yeah. But wait, here we're calling. Yeah, maybe before we get this, let me do a little bit of how did I set up this report, because it's gonna be tricky. One of the learnings on this process is that you need to keep the original visual untouched. Yeah. So with the text title, with all the fields, normal fields, drag there, because otherwise you will lose the reference to translate from, and you will also lose the place where you can make changes. Yeah. So let me show you how I set this up. This is something I realized a bit later than I wanted to in the process. But here you see for each visual, yeah, let me close this down. You see I have a lot of groups with certain ID, and for each of them, I see I have 2 visuals, one hidden and one is visible. Okay, let me zoom in. Yeah. So why am I doing this? here, you see I'm using the actual field, the original one. Yeah, so the English fields. Let me show it to you. Yeah, so you see, we see the English field and also the, is that correct? I think.
Maybe.
No, I think maybe this should be the, I think I changed something in the middle, but anyway, this could be also a field parameter if I wanted to. Yeah, in this particular case might not be the best. Let me check this one because these are all field parameters. In this one, okay. So in this one, for instance, okay, here I have the store list, and here I have the original KPI. Yeah. And here is showing everything because yeah, here now I'm filtering by something else. Oh, geez. Okay. Let's try now this one, which might be even easier. Here for this one, let's see where we get. Yeah, so you see I have for the order date, a year, month, short. Yeah, you see here, that's what I was mentioning. I moved into a single field like this, so I don't get the collapsing error thing. But this is the original one. This is in English, yeah? So, and I need, but and here also in this visual is where I can go and change if I want the title or something like this. This will remain here, you know? But then I will want to have another visual in which we use, instead of using the actual field, it will use a field parameter. Yeah, that we'll now see how we can generate. And this field parameter is the one that will go with our slicer. Yeah. So everything that you see in the bilingual layer is through field parameters, and all the field parameters are governed by this small slicer table. And also you will see that this little, it will have an ID that is the same name as the grouping that it has. Yeah, because this information is that we'll extract also saying, okay, this visual comes from this group. So when I create a new layer, say, okay, bring me the fields of that visual. That's how I can say, okay, you should be using the visuals that correspond. Yeah.
And I'm sure you'd love this as well, but it's like one, field parameters hopefully will be coming into GA soon, but it's like the day when we can either nest them, just directly point to like have another measure of them, or just use them in conditional formatting or titles. I'm sure this would actually be even more efficient if you could take field parameter names and just, because like I immediately just had a sparked idea, like what if your field parameter list, like rather than honestly even the data inside of it, just the labeling, which can be measures, because your title in a field parameter list can also be driven by measures as well.
That is true,
so like, if you could just, because you can essentially, a field parameter can display category, which is the title, or it can display a value, one of the two. If you could just stick that into a title and say display category, like first or something like that, in a hypothetical future, you'd be able to, you could just have a single master list of like titles to like add to all of these different things. It would be really nice. But that would require the field parameter to be able to be an upstream dependency for something, which today it's not like supported.
That. I don't think it will come soon though. Okay, let me go back here. So anyway, now we'll see how we can get this. So we need to get the visuals, also the titles of these, all the original ones. But here we see that we only need the original ones. So we need a way to tell apart which ones are the original ones and which ones are the actual, the bilingual ones. And only I want to mention real quick that, okay, the ones that are hidden are the original ones and the non-hidden ones are the bilingual ones. This is not good, because I tried that. And until you reach a page in a report where they are using bookmarks to, swap charts, and then the whole system is messed up. So what I did instead for this report is all the original ones. I use a couple letters inside the alt text. Advanced options, alt text, you see here. And then, I mean, you could have more text. It's just like the first two, you use them as a flag. And then also something I discovered, you know that in PBIR, each visual is a visual.json, right? But what I didn't know is that each visual group is also a visual.json. Yeah. So
that's fair.
Yeah. So here you see, for example, this is a visual.json. Yeah. So it has almost no properties. It just, okay, it has a name and an ID. Yeah. And then you see in this case, since it has like two different objects inside, you see there's a property called parent group name. Yeah. So that's how during the extraction, we will put all the information of certain visual, then we'll add this group name along with it so that we can later, unpack it in the other way around. So let's see if I can get, let's try to get this done and then we'll see the actual data flows. So yeah, so this is what we get from the PBIR files. But what about the contents of the field parameters? We need to get that from the semantic model. It's the only place where we can evaluate, and they are actually in a calculated table. So we have to some query to the semantic model that will bring us the content of all the different field parameters, and we'll do that in just a single table. But since the field names are different in each field parameter, we'll move that information into new columns, and we just use some generic names, and we'll put it back in the original way when we put back into the model. But now translations, all these four, these are very easy. Since I didn't, for this, since it's not so many elements, I say, okay, let's just translate everything so I can keep all the metadata in line. And so there is no summarization of all the different strings that are the same, because I thought that would be a bit too painful and too dangerous, because maybe something that is originally the same word, I might want to use different words in the translation or something like this. So anyway, of course, once you're translating, we will need some translation corrections for each of them. We'll need Microsoft Translator for the original one. I don't put the arrows because it will be a mess. Yeah. And finally, we get the tables that we mentioned at the beginning. So here we're only translating the display name. Yeah. But when we move into the curated one, we'll do the translation of the actual field. So if this field had like English textual, then we'll say, okay, what's the one we need to use in the Catalan? So it's a display name plus field thing, yeah? But in order to also to make it easy to load into the semantic model, we'll unpivot so that for each line, original line that we had here, now we have two, yeah? One for each language. So we have only one column for display name, one column for field, and one for language, yeah? And then we can load everything, but before that, we'll need also the visuals. We don't need any transformation, so we'll just shortcut them into the curated lakehouse. And now it's time to bring it back. These three tables can be loaded as they are, but these are, we want them to behave as visual parameters, and we also need to break them back into as many pieces as they were. For the field, sorry, this is wrong. This is not field parameters. This is fields in visual bilingual. Yeah, but we need one for each part of the visual object. So x-axis, y-axis, values, and so on, because yeah, we need to be able to separate them, right? So we cannot use the same field parameter in everywhere, because we need to filter what the specific fields we need for each part of the visual. So anyway, this is just breaking them into small tables. But now is the tricky part. Like, this is just a Power Query table. We need them to behave as a field parameter. How we do that? Because if you just try it, it doesn't work. But there is some properties that you can change with a Tabular Editor or Tyndall View or whatever you like. You need to add some extended properties with certain name and certain value, and then is when the magic happens. Yeah. And also, like, there's some group by columns properties, and there's something. So I made a small script to do that, and yeah, maybe we can have a look. But this is everything we need to do for that. So maybe now you want to see how the model looks like, because I mean, we have one is just the table, right? We have the original star schema, of course, is there. Yeah, this is our beautiful star schema from Contoso. But for the bilingual report, we have something. This, there's so many more tables. This is just for the titles and stuff. So here on the left-hand side, we see all the tables that are only dependent on the language. Yeah. So we have the field parameters. We have 3 of them. And the pages. Wait. Oh, yeah, exactly. And the pages. Yeah, the pages is only the language. There's nothing else to be filtering. Yet, so many other tables depend on both. What's the language and what's the visual group that you are adding it to. So here, let me make this a bit larger. But basically, these are like for the columns, and for some of the new visuals, it's called data. This is something, it's a property that's inside, yeah? Fields in visuals, the fields, yeah, in the field section. So because sometimes you might get more than one for a visual, so you need to make sure that you will be able to fill all the different visuals. And also the way that they are called inside the PBIR is different from the one that you see. So I also made like some mapping to say, okay, the PBIR calls it this way, but actually when you go into the UI, it's called something different. So then as you see here, for example, I'm using the fields in visual x-axis, and then the display text is the column that we need to use because it's the one that behaves as a field parameter. So, and that's when you get all the magic. Yeah. So from this, let me
So out
think.
of curiosity,
Yeah.
just
Yes.
was this a personal project? Because they're, as MVPs and consultants, we often have scenarios where it's like, just because like we don't necessarily need to do these, but we want to see if we can. We're trying to push the limits of stuff. So was this actually was this you wanted it to test for yourself to see how far you could get with this, or did you actually build this for a client out of curiosity?
I had to build it for a client. I was like,
oh,
no,
okay.
Let's not do it. Let's stay out of it. This is very difficult. Like, no. They're like, Bernat, you need to do it. You're our only developer.
It's the what's the phrase, the shut up and take my money meme. We're like, no, we know it's going to be expensive.
Like,
we will throw a bank of money at you. Please do this for because it's one of those where I don't think a lot of clients probably wouldn't do this, but I am glad that you were able to do this as a project and also get paid for it. It's the perfect, the best of both worlds.
It's beautiful. I'm really grateful for that, actually. Yeah, because I really wasn't into. I mean, I didn't even touch like the model metadata translations up until this project. And I was like, okay, let's see where we get. Okay, so I think we talked about this. Oh, list accumulate. Oh yeah, for the Power Query. Yeah, we can have a quick look at it. Let me external tools, Tabular Editor. Yeah, and also there is something I didn't mention, but we also need to be a bit aware of. Is like, you need to be very careful on the translation metadata and the translation corrections, because of course you will have somebody from the business side fixing all those translations, but at some point you will need to refresh that because maybe new values have come in and you want to check if they need translations. But you also need to be careful that you need to make sure that the data that you typed in has already been merged inside. Yeah. So I have like a timestamp and then some small macro that checks, okay, when's the latest time you modified the data? When's the latest time that the data flow was refreshed? And so it kind of, it checks for you which ones. Also, I mentioned the flag I use for the visuals, but for the field parameters, I put like some suffix at the name because you need, at the end, I have so many field parameters, but I still need to be able to run the ETL and translate the regional field parameters. So you need a way of telling each other apart. And here, let me show you real quick the macro for that. Configure table as field parameter. So basically, you make the user select the 3 columns, like what the display name, field name, and order column. Yeah, all the basic 3 columns that you get. And here's where it does things. So here is you see extended property, it's need to call parameter metadata, and this is the value it needs to have, like version 3 kind 2, and it needs to be a JSON kind of, because they are like the text and JSON, so it needs to be JSON. Yeah, you can do that manually, but if you need to do it for all the extra field parameters, it becomes quite time consuming. And also you need to do for the display column, you need to do a group by the column that contains the field. Yeah, and also you sort it by the order column, and sort by and then the field as well. You can order it by the same one. Yeah, and then you hide them if you want to leave them as if it were created by Power BI Desktop. But this is all you need to do. Yeah. So if we go and check any of these tables, you will see that this is a property that they have set up. Extended properties. Wait, where is it? No, it's not it's not a table property. It's a column property. Yeah. So the one that actually, let me show you. Where is it? Preview data. Yeah. So zoom. Sorry, not this. Come on. Where is it? Field. You see, you need a column that has exactly this content, right? The table with the single quotes and the field name. Also be careful. This is case sensitive. So even if the C is a lowercase, it will not work. It's something I also discovered the hard way. And apparently they're going to fix that before GA. And now if we go to that field, now we see the extended property I was telling you about. Where is it? Okay, yeah. So you see it's a type JSON and this is the value. If a column has this, it will behave as a field parameter. But of course, this column is very ugly, so you don't really want to use this column on your report. So that's why you have the display text that has the group by column. Yeah, and it's group by column using the field one. So this is very interesting. So when a column has a group by column, any filter, or it will behave as if you are using the other one, really. Even though you see one, internally everything is like the other one. So this is also very nice. This is Owen Ogre is the guy who really
I know Owen.
Told me everything about that. He did an awesome presentation in our local user group. And it is also a way to have a dynamically changing selection in a slicer. So you have your date, you have a date column, right? But then you can also have an offset, day offset column. Yeah. So and then you select your date column and they say the group by column, the offset column. Yeah. So even though you select 4th of April, internally it will record day offset equals 0. So when you go in tomorrow, the selection will be actually the 5th of April, because we'll be still using the offset column. I mean, if you refresh the model, of course, yeah. So
that's always a hard part about getting things aligned when you have different time zones and like having sales for a particular day.
Oh, well, stuff. That's something. Yeah, that's a different battle. But anyway, at least you can get the date right. And but then you get, sometimes it's tricky. So you need to be careful, because then stuff that normally works perfectly, then it kind of doesn't work. So you go to selected value. You see, in field parameters, you need to be careful, right? If you want to see which field parameter, which element of the field parameter you're selecting, and you do a selected value over the first column, it gives you an error saying, "Oh, I don't have all the fields," or I don't know, a very confusing message. So that's then you do a max, or you have to do like an actual copy of that first column and do a selected value over that column, and then you don't have the problem. And this is the reason. This group by column gives you something, but at the same time, it makes things a bit tricky sometimes. So just so that you're aware of that. And I see I'm about to run out of time, so I'm not sure if there was any comment or something I should pay attention from the chat, or
just a couple of comments and saying how awesome it is, but nothing, no specific questions on anything.
Okay, well, But I mean, I didn't mention that, but I think that the blog covers that even in more detail. So I invite you to come to the blog and see all the different traps and gotchas that I found through the process. I had to break it up into two articles. Oh, also, yeah, this is also that hit hard. So when you use a field parameter in a visual and you go and check in the PBIR, you see like this. You see the projections are actually the actual fields like columns and measures, but you also see that there are field parameters. And at first I say, okay, whatever, I can just read from the projections, but this is wrong because it doesn't really. It's not always 100% in sync to what you see in the report. So what happened to me, I would be switching languages and then switch it back and then extract the data again. And at the end, I would have a mixture of both languages. And I was like, what is going on? Until I realized that you should not do that. Yeah, but really the biggest learning was keep the original visual, because I got very carried away the moment I had visual translate. I had the translation for the titles, for instance. It's like, wow, now I can use a measure, and then boom, I would delete, and say, no, this is not a text anymore. It's this measure. But then say, oh, Bernat, you know what? I need to change that title. It's like, oh, that's too late because now it only exists inside a table somewhere, and the process to translate it is not really there anymore. So
yeah, that's fair.
And
love the meme, by the way. Said love the meme,
always.
By the way.
Memes
Admiral Akbar.
helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I change the title? No, you cannot, because I deleted that. So it was a big process. Yeah. So the flag, don't use the hidden ones because you might need it for something else, and so back and forth. So also, yeah, I learned a lot. So, but I think, 99% of the companies will say, okay, we're a multinational company now, so all reporting needs to be in English, and that's pretty much the end of it. Because otherwise, you're just doing some, I don't know. Yeah, we just translate the titles. Come on, this is not serious translation. So if somebody cannot read that language, the fact that you translated 10% of the report is not going to help. So unless you expect people to know some of the original language, but really figure out that the original one is Chinese. You need to translate everything.
Wasn't it Japanese or was it Chinese?
It's Japanese. And in that case, we had to translate or transliterate even the people's name, because otherwise you don't know which employee did what. Yeah, and that was really tough because, at first we sent it to the automatic translation, but of course, in Japanese, like in many languages, sometimes last names have meanings, right? So and then some Kaki-san was like Mr. Oyster and stuff like that. No, you cannot change the name of people, right? So we found out, luckily they had this, I don't know, you're familiar with Japanese, they have this syllabic alphabets, and for names, sometimes they do have that field with a phonetic.
You lived there for 3 years?
5 years. 5 years.
5 years. Yeah, so you're fairly fluent in it. I can just barely get around at restaurants, know how to order the check and get to the bathroom, and just enough to convince people that I speak it until skoshi nihongo.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly good at casual conversations, but then people assume that I'm great at Japanese, so that they can throw me any document and stuff. Like, no, wait a minute. This is my ceiling. This is my thing. Yeah. But still, somehow now I have this Japanese customer, and it's quite fun. And I mean, most of the conversation is one-to-one. So if I say something weird, it doesn't get out of that meeting, and it's fun for both. So Anyway, there's a lot of Power Query. These visual.jsons are very, very nested, so you need to learn how to navigate this. And I think it can still be done better than I did. One day, I would like to create some script that generates all this extra layer for you, because it's actually very mechanic. So you need to, use the same visual, group it, and then on the original one, put something, all the alt text, and the other one not. and I don't know, and that's pretty much it. So, but really doing it by hand, it's quite a lot of work. That report had like 11 pages or something, and bookmarks and all this sort of thing. Yeah, for bookmarks also it was tricky because bookmarks text for the the buttons, it doesn't. It's not dynamic. You cannot put like a measure or an expression on the button of the bookmark navigator. So yeah, I had to do some arrangements. Basically, I put like another bookmark that would swap the bookmark navigator for another one. But really not fun to do. But you gotta do what you gotta do, right?
Yeah, the closest I've come to that is the new slicer button slicer, tile slicer has a label and sub-label, and I have been able to do dynamic. I have like a little trick that I show where you can actually like swap the labeling, because and at least have like alternative labels to show depending on status. That's good. Yeah, so that's the closest I've been able to get. But yes, as of yet, there's no way to say like have a behind the scenes linked value, but have a separate dynamic display name that like overrides it from the visual perspective. Hopefully we get that at some point, like measure driven labels where it's connected to a static label or whatever it is, or column name or table name, page name in the model, but it will display whatever you want to.
Yep. Exactly.
Now this was awesome. I think it's a good case study to show that's like, yes, it is possible, but like this is one of those it's very bespoke, and you have to build all 50 stories one at a time if you want to do something like this to truly get it, because it's kind of an all or nothing. You can't translate 80% of the page and have 20% untranslated. Yeah, like mostly Japanese with a bit of English. So you really have to make sure everything gets translated, and that takes a lot of time and effort.
Yep. The thing is that once you decide that you need to translate the data, then all bets are off. You need to go full field parameters for everything. There's no other alternative. I mean, the language, user culture, any of this will not work. So yeah, that was a lot of learning.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of any other ways. They go any other possible options and I'm sure you looked at it. You can maybe have multiple pages with bookmarks. Yeah, separate reports where you simply just have hyperlinks. Yeah, exactly. There's no easy path to do this, essentially.
I mean, I thought of having like a complete separate report in the different language, right? And create like versions.
And you just button with a URL. Yeah.
But but at the same time, this is gonna be a mess. I mean, this is already quite a mess, but at least it's just one mess. So if you need to start having different stuff, I decided it would be too difficult.
Yep.
But yeah, even the first, I don't know, I would be mapping all the different visuals in an Excel sheet and kind of like which is which. And then, and finally I decided that maybe grouping them would be a better way. I mean, that was once I realized that visual.json was actually, the groups were also visual.json. I was like, oh, and then, okay, wait, I need to redo everything again. So yeah, the project was a bit over budget. I didn't think it would be that difficult, but eventually we got it right. And I now have more or less of a process and also like a benchmark on which to improve. So hopefully one day I get better at Python or something and we can do something better, because not all tables need to be refreshed all the time, but since the way that data flows work, I kind of refresh them. I mean, the mapping table, unless you add new fields, you should not refresh it. But it's not too big, so it's like whatever, refresh everything. Yeah.
No, I get it. And hopefully at least the client was aware of, like, if you ask for this is going to be a lot of work.
Oh yeah. They were like, just tell us how much. And I was like, okay. I don't know, 120 hours, like, okay, do it. I was like, okay, it's more. I mean, it's very hard because there were so many pitfalls and gotchas on the way that, I don't know, I did my best. And at least that, I mean, time-wise, I mean, they want it by December and they had it by December. But,
okay, nice.
Hour-wise,
you met the deliverable.
Yeah. And well, I didn't mention they had like 3 environments, and data flows do not work with deployment pipelines. So I had to basically manually redo everything. I mean, it's still today it's a mess, because I think it's just today I realized that they finally can be orchestrated with a pipeline, because this was one of the remaining limitations for the CI/CD data flow gen tool.
Okay.
So today it was like, yeah, it's still there in the limitations, and I look at it, oh, it's not there anymore. So yeah, but then I'll need to like kind of upgrade everything and save as CI/CD data flow gen 2, and then probably the lake houses and everything will need to be redone or something, because they are not quite linked. I don't know. I'm a bit afraid of this, but I definitely need to do it sometime, because any change I need to do, it's a complete pain.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, well, as PBIR and everything becomes more prevalent out of GA universe, like I do wonder if this kind of stuff can be automated, where you can almost have a base model, but then you can instantly load and eject separate report layers, which would essentially do what you're doing now, but like you only actually have one model. You don't need the extra tables. It just the translation layer, it would essentially be kept separately, almost in the reporting layer, or something else between the two. You'd have two metadata layers that could be swapped around somehow automatically in a theoretical world. But I just would wonder of the possibility of some of that stuff. Yeah.
I mean, even if we can automate what we have today here, that would be awesome. Because I mean, it's really mechanic. The good thing about it is that there's no case by case thing that you need to do. It's just get all the little cues, right? So all the alt text flags, all the data flows for the field parameters and so on. And then in the landing, get the field name right. From there on, it's straightforward.
Yep, exactly.
It's just about sometimes you need to do some adjustments. So for example, the new KPI card, it's nice, but it doesn't work with field parameters. So you need to come up with a different idea. And in that case, I did the classical metrics approach, so that you could display all the different KPIs. But that's,
I think, overall, well, yeah, this has been fantastic. I encourage anybody to check out the blog that Bernat has down in the description below. But yeah, I think it was a good job of both breadth and depth to cover everything. So I appreciate you for showing this, but to really highlighting the complexity. Yeah, no, like it's possible, but not easy to do this stuff. So thank you.
No. All right. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And as always, would love to get you back on at some point in the future. But otherwise, thank you for taking time out of your Friday evening to come on and share this. This has been good. I certainly learned a few new things about ways to do some of this. But if I ever have a client come knocking at my door for this, I'll might have to hit you up for some expertise on this subject.
Totally. Now I'm okay with it. Yeah.
Perfect. Any closing remarks or suggestions for links or anything else to check out of anything that I haven't already mentioned?
No, I mean, yeah, ping me if you have anything that you want to discuss. Power BI, or especially calculation groups, C# scripts. That's the stuff I like. Is this possible with the calculation group? This also helps me come up with ideas for the blog as well.
Oh yeah, it's great when you can get those organically and come up with new ideas to do videos on.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Any just by the way, you're going to be at SQLBits this year?
Actually, no. I did send like a lot of, but I wasn't lucky. I mean, they had like 1,000 submissions. It's like I was extremely lucky last year. That's all I can say.
That's
I'll
fair.
be in Germany. Though, in a Data Saturday Rhineland or something like this.
Oh, that's okay.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve and I will be there. That's why I was curious, because I saw the shirt. So I'll be in Europe in a couple months.
Awesome, very good.
Cool. Well then, otherwise, have a great rest of your Friday night and weekend. Thank you for coming on, and looking forward to having you back on next time.
All right, thank you.
All right, cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, take a look at our channel memberships or our merchandise store for cool swag. And last but not least, please consider sharing this video on your social media platform of choice to help our channel grow. So, until next time.